Ledley.
Did I spell it wrong on another slide?
Got it.
I'm not like South Deerfield, I just say your line right, hopefully you go for it.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was our guest countdown from John Patrick from Deerfield visiting tonight. He did a great job. We'll have him back at another meeting. This is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Sunderland Board of Selectmen. If we could call to order at 7:04. We have first on our agenda tonight, review, overview, and presentation about the multi-month effort by the towns of Sunderland, Deerfield, and Whately on a regional EMS. And that, again, is something that was initiated with concerns expressed by a handful of chiefs in the area. And a working group was put together, a charge was put together, a timetable was put together, and now it is time for our official rollout. This step will be the presentation of some of the need presented by Chief Ahern, as well as some of the timeline, and then some of the proposed budget numbers. And we're joined tonight by Town Administrator from both Deerfield and from Whately. So, Chief, I'm going to turn that piece over to you.
Okay, thank you. We've been working on this for a couple of years. More regularly, the last 6 months, we've been kind of organized and had a timetable, as you said, to come up with a joint service between the three towns. Margaret's made us a PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to kind of go over to create a regional ambulance service, which I just said, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, first response paramedic ambulance, to best meet the emergency medical needs of the residents now and in the future. Right now, we got a basic level service in Sunderland, and Deerfield and Whately both have intermediate. This would bring us up to a paramedic level service, which we all subscribe to either Northampton or Greenfield to come in and intercept us, but we'd have it right on the ambulance as it rolls out of the bay. We thought this was the best way to go with the 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as times have changed over the last 20, 30 years, where there used to be a lot of available personnel, seem to be able to fill the seats of the ambulance very well. I think each town has finally realized that it's not working as good as it used to be. Times have changed for whatever reason, but this is what we come up with. Next. Why is change necessary? All of the towns use a call force personnel to respond to medical emergencies. None of the towns are able to staff 24/7 EMS operations. None of the towns have dedicated paramedic advanced life support. All of the towns rely on outside ALS providers. None of the towns have a ready reserve ambulance to respond when the only ambulances are unavailable. The last bullet point there about the ready reserve, I've kind of talked about the others already. Wherever this thing is going to be housed in the future, there'll be 2 ambulances. Deerfield and Sunderland's are the 2 newest out of the 3, and they'll be, the way we've talked about it anyways, is they'll be right beside each other, in case one doesn't start, the other one will be ready to go out the door. Right now, if one of them is broken down, one of the other towns has to cover in the meantime. Next. What's wrong with the local EMS? Critical lack of manpower in all the towns. On-call EMT availability has eroded despite recruitment efforts. Training requirements deter interest in on-call service. 20% of all EMS requests are transported by mutual aid ambulance services due to lack of personnel. 20 to 80% of calls during non-staff period require retoning the local ambulance service. If no local response, an outside ambulance service must respond. What that part right there is talking about is a lot of calls are paramedic level calls, and sometimes, they take between 10 and 20 minutes to get to a scene, the paramedics do, and that's a long time to be waiting, and sometimes they end up being primary. Patients may wait for 30 minutes or longer for an ambulance. Towns are required to pay for transports and ALS intercepts provided by outside ambulance services. We are required to pay for them, but we also get paid from the, patient's medical insurance, so that's coming in one hand and out the other. Any questions on this?
That's by agreement, right?
The intercepts are, yes,
The payment is an agreed upon.
right. Just last year, the local paramedics in Greenfield had the whole county redo their intercept agreements, and we all, it finally got signed. It took quite a long time, but, because they wanted a exorbitant amount, and we got them down a little bit.
Can I ask you one question about that, Bob? I don't quite, so let's say Whiteley doesn't join the group.
Yep.
What would happen? Why, I'm saying, and not that Whiteley would do this, but why would they join if the insurance is gonna pay the intercept and it's not their responsibility? So if there's a $2,000 ambulance for a citizen from Whiteley and the regional from Sunderland Deerfield responds, it's a $2,000 it's an actual cost. We can actually know what it costs, and their insurance pays $1,000. Why should Deerfield and Sunderland pay $1,000 for Whiteley?
Are you talking about, when the outside service comes in?
Yeah, because we would be an outside, right, we would be an outside service to Whiteley at that point, if they're not part of the regional agreement.
That's when mutual aid becomes primary aid, if Whately or any town didn't start doing their own calls when they should.
So why would we have to go there?
Well, we'd really have to talk to their fire chief or whoever's in charge of their EMS and say, we're going to your town a lot.
I wouldn't
I think
join.
we've actually talked about putting that restriction in our agreement that we would not provide primary service. We provided advanced life support if needed, or mutual aid, but
Yeah.
not primary aid.
Correct.
Okay.
Lynn?
I was just gonna explain, Margaret actually touched on the point. There's a difference between mutual aid and primary aid. Mutual aid is when the town that you're going to has used up its resources. So if we don't get an ambulance, that's not using up your resources. It would then be primary aid. And that when it's primary aid, it's something that this regional service can deny going for primary aid. So it's not really beneficial to the town of Whately not to participate, because you folks may decide that you aren't going to respond for primary aid, only for mutual aid. We got that definition from Phil Bonaiuto at the,
Because that does happen in a particular area. It's not Whately or anybody, but it's another town around us that one of these three towns supplies a lot of primary aid when their ambulances are tied up.
I think there are several towns in the area that, I don't want to say several, there are some towns in the area that do rely on primary aid from other communities, because those other communities are not restricting their aid to that town.
That's by agreement, not necessarily backing
It's either
in.
by agreement
Not
or lack
backing
of,
into it.
lack of
Or lack of
restrictions.
agreement.
Yeah, lack of an agreement, yeah.
It's more, it's essentially how much free riding in
That's right.
economic term
Right.
do you want to tolerate? And should South County EMS become, into existence, become a paramedic level service, our intention is not to allow free riding. And it gets into the discussion of mutual aid versus primary aid. The other thing is that the insurance companies don't pay for 2 ambulance runs.
Right.
If there's an intercept, guess who loses money?
Right.
It's the ambulance the EMTs have to hop on the bus, and they get paid, you get less money for the run, even though your costs are the same as any other run, so.
And that free riding or backing into it, that kind of coverage is what you were driving at. I want to make sure I capture that.
And I would say, why, I would say if I can get us the same service for no charge, why would I pay for the, why would I pay for the service?
Sure.
And not
think
that
we have
somebody
it
would do
spelled
that,
out.
but
In our draft agreement that we wouldn't be doing that.
Boz,
We did talk about
just excuse me for 1 second.
Yeah.
I know you, I know EMTs, I know paramedics. Okay, I can tell you one thing, if the call comes in, you're going.
Right.
So that's just how you guys do things.
Right.
And I'm saying you got a town that may not wanna join because they just don't wanna pay the money. And I would really, and I mean, it's a hard point, but if it's a service that costs $2,000 and they're only get reimbursed for $1,000, I was gonna have as a manager, I would have a hard time taking that deficit on. So that may kibosh the whole thing to me.
Can I just make one comment?
You can, but I've read your selectmen's comments in the newspapers.
Whately, it's not that we don't want to pay the money, it's our EMTs would like to try to organize well enough to correct the problem on their own. The money situation, that is not part of that deal.
In the context of, you know, revenues and costs, the reality is that all of our towns underwrite a fair amount of our EMS service, regardless of the insurance reimbursement. Okay,
Either directly or indirectly.
absolutely,
Absolutely.
absolutely right.
But right now, we're all in it together.
Right. And, you know, to be fair, I think if this thing gets up and running, and we do notice those problems, it's gonna be a matter of coming back to select boards, asking for help. We need to have conversations, going and relying on the state. Here's what you told us, here's what our protocols, and protocol may be, before we send mutual aid, we're gonna call in a backup crew.
Mhm.
They've gotta arrive and get an ambulance and go over to help you out, so it's gonna be a little while. Not that we don't wanna lend the help
Okay,
or
you
the
guys
hand
wouldn't do
that's
that.
needed. But
See, we would, because we're money pinchers. You guys wouldn't, because you're deliverers of service.
Except that by sending out the primary ambulance, you're sending out your paramedic. You're
Right.
sending
Well, that's
out
the
the
other thing.
paramedic.
And the second concern,
There is another paramedic service available to respond, and that's Space Station, and that would be what would be expected. Was,
and
if you,
I agree.
If you don't have an agreement with South County EMS, then Bay State gets toned when you need a paramedic level ambulance.
I guess that's a second point of my question, is that if we have a paramedic level service and they're in Whately or Hatfield or some other town and not taking care of Whately or Sunderland and Deerfield, how does that work? You ain't calling the guys back. Oh, leave that there, you have a call in Sunderland, you gotta go.
Hatfield serviced by Northampton, but
I'm just,
in the grand scheme of things, it's gonna happen. You're gonna get an auto accident on 91 that's gonna have 4 or 5 injuries, they're gonna bring in 3 or 4 ambulances to take care of that. We'll get called.
But that's true mutual aid.
That's
Exactly.
mutual aid.
Exactly.
That's true.
And in those cases, if another call comes in, we're gonna be relying on BHA to come south and pick it up, or Northampton to come north if they have another free unit, or Conway, or whoever else happens to be around. But as Bob mentioned, it's true mutual aid. This, no matter what we come up with, we're not gonna solve 100% of all the issues. It's no more than saying the fire department could handle 4 fires going on in town at one time. It's not gonna happen. But it'll take care of probably 90 to 95% of what's out there. It will certainly improve the service that's being delivered today. It will improve response times. It will deliver a higher level of care, but it's not gonna be 100% foolproof.
Which was the charge.
Right.
I mean, that was the charge. That was the goal at the onset of the discussions, as Bob pointed out a couple of years ago. You know, how do we challenge the current model? And so this is the outcome of that challenge and a fair amount of work associated with it.
And I would guess that Bob still has about 2 or 3 more slides to go.
Yeah.
Or 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, this slide is about out-of-chute time and fractile response time. Out-of-chute time is the time between notification to ambulance service and the ambulance initiating response. Does everybody want to read it on their own and
Yeah, we can
ask
do that.
questions?
The backstory to this, Bob, is the research that was done with the different agencies, the 3 towns, as well as some help with a consultant that was brought in. And again,
Yes,
we're
and-
talking about a geographic area, and then the two times themselves.
All right, we'll take Sunderland, for instance, over 5 minutes at 68.33% of the time. So that's telling us that most of the time takes us more than 5 minutes to get the ambulance on the road. Whether there's a full-time man sitting there, he's still gotta wait for the second one, or 2 people coming from home. So it's pretty much most of the time that has to happen, and this new system will lower that number greatly.
And that's the first piece of the time, the total of the fractile from call to arrival of the service. By reducing that first step is helpful in reducing the second step.
Correct. The initiating, the time of the 911 call to the time you're in contact with the patient. Someone has 18 minutes, 94% in less than 5 miles.
According to the consultant's data, none of the 3 towns are meeting the national
I was just
norms for
looking at
similar
that, yeah.
sized or similar geography, so.
And when you look at this just on its own, I mean, the 5 minutes is where the cutoff was.
Right.
And it can seem like it's an extraordinary long time to wait, but if you think about the phone ringing and somebody saying, I need you here now, it takes a couple of minutes to get your shoes on, make sure you're dressed appropriately, put stuff back in the fridge, turn off the stove, do whatever you've gotta do, and then get in the car, start it up, and get down the road.
Amongst other things.
Yes.
That we're
You know,
not
middle of
gonna
the night,
mention.
there's also another pit stop along the way before you get in the car to go.
And in the snow.
Yeah.
Good points.
I didn't say next slide.
I'm sorry, back to the old slide. Is it okay now?
Yeah. Geography and proposed regional ambulance location. 66.86 is the total square miles of the 3 towns, Deerfield, Sunderland, and Whately. Option 1 is the South Deerfield Fire District. Approximately 30% improvement in response time based upon similar sized services, covering similar sized geography, call location, immediate ambulance availability. Option 2 is Sunderland Fire. Approximate 27% improvement in response time based on the same parameters. Not a lot of difference. From either location, a fully staffed available ambulance could be on scene within 15 minutes or less, 85% of the, or more, of the EMS responses.
Mr. Chair, may I ask a question, please?
Which goes back to the last,
Do we have an agreement with South Deerfield Fire District on the use of the place in Deerfield?
no.
Not as of yet.
Then knock it off. Go to option 2, take option 1. We've been doing this for how long? Take option 1 off the table, go to option 2. It's time to move forward. If you want to get on the train, get on the train. If the South Deerfield Fire District can't make a decision, we can't get them to commit, why do we keep screwing around with this? Then they're gonna have to keep going back, and we never can talk about numbers.
At the last meeting for South Deerfield Fire District, I made a motion to try and determine what the requirements were for the ambulance to be in there. All 3 of the Prudential Committee members talked to me after the fact and said, they're waiting for somebody to go to them. Nobody's ever levied them and said, this is what we want. We want 1 space, we want 2 space, we want 2 priority space. We want 1 office, we want 1 medicine room, we want to have 1 bunk room. Nobody's ever gone to them and told them that.
Why haven't we done that, Margaret?
I would like to address, I did go to the South Deerfield Prudential Committee. Bernie and I met in the fall, made an initial proposal, explained to them what we're doing and what we're looking for. I was back to see them again last month and expressed once again, here's what we're looking for, and told them we're looking to keep the same office space, the same everything that we've got now. My only other thing I was asking for was a second bay, or second base space for a second ambulance.
Okay.
I have
That must have been after that.
It was after that meeting,
because that's what they told me. All three of them had the same story, including the chief, and he says, we're waiting for them to get to us and tell us what your needs are.
I had a response tonight, they're working on a figure for the rent for us.
Okay, right.
So we've defined, I'm hearing, as of late, the space has been defined, right? The need's been defined. And so that is gonna fit in the model that's being proposed?
Mm-hmm.
And how often do they meet? I'm just curious.
They meet monthly.
Monthly.
And would it help for the 3 towns, if, say, a member of each of the boards of selectmen in the 3 towns to have a formal meeting with them at some point in the near future?
You can have it, but they're very easy to work with. All you gotta do is go in there and talk to them.
Well, I think it would be, if
And
there's
if
gonna be a
Matt went in there,
3-town
that's great.
service. you-
But when I went to the meeting, they said, nobody's ever come back and said, this is what our needs are. Tell us what the needs are, and then I'll come back with a figure. Because they told me they will not charge Deerfield if Deerfield stays in there alone. But if the 3 towns come in together, then they will charge.
Tom?
Mr. Chair, the only thing I'm saying is that when you work with a group of 3 towns or 3 people, you have to keep your focus, and you can't allow distractions to enter. This is a distraction. South Deerfield doesn't want the South Deerfield Fire District doesn't want, and they don't live in a vacuum, okay? What I'm saying, they don't live in a,
They don't want
they
it.
don't live in a vacuum. They know what's going on. If they don't want to participate, then let's go to option 2. My preference, looking at the numbers, it's actually, for my house, I get just as good service from to South Deerfield as it does the Sunderland Public Safety Complex. I know what's gonna cost at the Sunderland Public Safety Complex, move it. We can't keep vacillating. You can't, well, is Whiteley in or Whiteley not in? Is Hatfield in or Hatfield not in? Are we gonna have 1 paramedic or 2 paramedics? We have to make a decision on the plan that's gonna serve our communities. Every week that we do, you risk someone having a serious problem that we can't respond to. Why is it taking so long? Go to option 2. Deerfield doesn't want it? Fine. Let's go to option 2. It's simple. It really is. And you can say that you talk to whoever, they don't live in they don't live in a vacuum. If they know what's going on, they can come to us.
They said they're waiting for something,
Well,
and
then-
Matt went
then
over there
they
and
can
talked to them.
continue to wait.
Now they're gonna get back to us.
They can continue to wait. I say go to option 2. Move it. Move it forward.
Do both buildings accommodate the need? Is there anything that comes out immediately if option 2 came about? Is there any additions, subtractions that have to happen with the current footprint of the fire station?
No.
That's all right. Any other questions with respect to options and the physical locations?
If both of them suffice, and both work equally well,
Right.
I don't think we should nickel dime it with whatever it costs for one versus the other.
Can I make a suggestion? I'd like to get put on their agenda, and I will go on bended knee to the Almighty and ask them for a moment of their special time, because they need someone to come to them and ask them this question. I don't think it's necessary. They know what's going on. We've talked to them. I'm sure the town administrator has talked to them. If it needs to act that way, fine. I personally don't think it has to be that way. I think we could do a community effort. I'm worried if we start this 2 years down the road, say, well, it's really not working out, you guys are gonna find another home.
No, we've had, that we have had extensive discussions on. If there is an agreement, there has to be a long-term
Like a-
written
Right,
agreement.
like a lease agreement,
A lease, there
essentially.
has to be a lease agreement, and everybody was in agreement on that. There has to be. It can't be a verbal, it can't be loose, it can't be open-ended, it has to be a firm.
Do you have a document put together with everything but the dates? What you need is put in a document. Mr.
Square feet.
Mr. Chair, I would suggest that we put a document together by next week with what our things are and mail it to their attention so that it can be officially, no one can say, I didn't hear, we weren't all there. Mail it to their attention.
Sure. Document request for space.
I think that's easy.
Sure.
Tell them how much square footage, what base or what we need, send it to them. And let's get it over with. And then have them respond to us in writing so that we don't have to go hearing it through the newspapers, which we have.
That part's easy.
Because I've heard 3 different stories from people already.
With a response deadline probably too.
Yeah, with a response deadline, again, define the space, define the request,
Right.
define the duration.
Right.
And then move forward.
Moving forward.
I wish.
What are the benefits of a regional EMS service? Approximately 90% of the responses will be covered with consistently approved EMS response times. Higher quality clinical care will be provided at the paramedic level, and ALS intercept cost will be reduced. Reliance on mutual aid will significantly be reduced. First call response will be guaranteed in the participating communities. A primary and a ready reserve ambulance will be available for immediate response. Duplication of efforts among individual communities will be eliminated. Questions on that?
Well, it outlines hopefully the outcome, right? We set a goal, and hopefully it matches the outcome or exceeds it.
Yes.
Well, here it is. Okay. I'm sure there'll be many more questions coming, but the group worked really hard to reduce the consultant's proposed budget by, oh gosh, I think it was close to $150,000 when all was said and done. In an effort to maintain the services expected by the three towns, the 24/7 paramedic level service. The proposed year one operating and capital budget, as reduced, would be $882,130. Projected revenues, that's ambulance receipts and any other sources of revenue. My understanding is that they are, this isn't a reach, that this would be expected revenue. $386,138, and the net allocable budget would be $495,992. That is the amount that would be apportioned between the participating towns in a 50-50 formula based upon each town's population and equalized valuation. There were several scenarios that were drawn up by the consultant as far as coming up with a formula for apportioning the costs for the service. And this particular formula was the most equitable. It was, for all three towns, it represents numbers that are in between, basically represent the median numbers for each of the towns. So numbers right in between the maximum each town would pay and the minimum each town would pay. So there's no question of all the formulas, and the board has access to those formulas. That is the most equitable formula. And based on that number in year one, Sunderland's anticipated operating and capital assessment would be $156,138. And that amount, because there is money existing in the ambulance reserve fund, that amount could be offset with the remaining balance in ambulance reserve. That $156,138 is approximately $60,000 more than the town pays now for its call force, for its basic EMT call service. And that's it.
So 24/7 paramedic level coverage, housed, staffed,
Yeah,
equipped,
Equipment,
equipped.
expenses.
plus up of really 60,000 out of the 100 and change we already pay.
That's correct.
Right.
Is it proportionate across the towns, might I ask?
And that, by the way, is all costs.
Right, all costs.
That means all the insurance.
That's everything.
Right, total operating
All built in,
costs.
in fact,
Operating costs, but also health insurance and the like. for
yeah,
the
right,
staff.
retirement, Medicare,
Retirement
all built in.
contributions,
Mhm.
All those, for Deerfield, where we have 3 EMTs now, those would get shifted from accounts and
Mhm.
into this one, because they're housed in different accounts now. I don't know what the arrangement would be in Sunderland and Whately, they're all volunteers, so
Right.
it's a new cost.
Well, Sunderland would be shifting one full-time equivalent, so other than that, we do have call. As far as the jump you just asked about the increase, every town pays a different amount for its local ambulance service, so the increases each town sees are gonna differ based on what they're paying now. But the EQV and population formula is apportioned. Deerfield would pay 51.76%, Sunderland would pay 31.48%, and Whately would pay 16.76%.
You said it was like 60,000 more.
Yeah.
And when you factor in how many calls that go out, the amount you're paying more seems to be a reasonable amount when you consider the quality of the service and the increased response time.
But there are two things.
Look at
It's
that.
not just the quality of service, but increased response time, which would be a challenge if the service were to remain a call service.
Right, and how do you put a price on, that increased response time could be the difference between life and death for somebody. And
That's
how do you
right.
put a price on that? The minutes can matter.
Points. Good points. Marty, Tom? Bob? Okay, so
Questions from the audience?
next steps here. We have a draft MOU.
Would you explain the breakdown of operating and capital and how you came up with those figures?
The consultant came up with those figures, and the original numbers, how the consultant came up with those figures, I guess you'd have to be provided the report. All his figures were derived from data that he gathered. I don't know.
They're basically, it's a basic program cost that Bruce used to project out. We did this in three pieces. First piece was based on his knowledge and his long time involvement operating an ambulance company, being involved in service. Bruce projected out a cost for 24/7 paramedic level ambulance service.
Worst case scenario.
Worst case scenario. There was the gold-plated version.
It
is what I
was.
call it. Well, fully loaded, as he called it.
Fully loaded, that's right.
We then used his framework and substituted our costs, which brought it down. And then it was a further modification to move a little bit further away from his framework. So rather than having 2 paramedics on staff 24/7, this model has an EMT and a paramedic on staff. So you're shaving some costs.
Sure.
And still staying within the requirements, the licensing requirements of the state. Looked at a little bit of a greater flexibility in terms of, we were thinking about staffing it versus his choice of staffing. Some of his costs were higher than ours. Different replacement ratios. We're not counting on replacing an ambulance every 5 years. 7 to 8, that stretches things out. So we began to ratchet the costs down that way. And there's still probably some fine tuning that needs to go on, but I think we're all comfortable we can operate a paramedic level ambulance service as described for that amount of money.
In the event that there are only 2 towns, how does that change the numbers?
Yeah, I knew that question was gonna come up.
Oh, I
Let's
hope
see if
so.
I had run some numbers before. I didn't have a chance to do it again today, but I did do a 2-town scenario. It obviously does change the numbers. You're talking about dividing the 100% cost between 2 towns instead of 3.
Whately's cost is 86,000, so figure, I mean, it's just figure 50-50 split.
Yeah.
Would it change the
So you'd probably
total
go
cost,
about,
the 882 figure?
no, that would stay the same.
No,
Yeah,
no,
because
it changed projected revenues.
Projected
It would
revenues, I
change
assume,
projected
would change
revenues, yes.
by 10%
Yeah.
lower.
There would have to be some adjustments both on the revenue side and the budget side.
But again, we're talking about being able to staff at 24/7 a paramedic level
Yes,
service.
the
So
staffing-
the model itself doesn't change.
That's right.
The funding sources change, and they become distributed across 2 parties,
Right.
which means they'll be paying
Well,
the
receipts.
percentages more.
Yeah, receipts would be reduced. The other thing I want to add before this ends is, the state makes available every year a Community Innovation Challenge grant. It's called the CIC Grant Opportunity. It's released in November of every year for grant disbursements in January. The state looks specifically for projects like this, regional projects where there would be efficiency improvements, improvements to public service. What other things would they have?
November, Margaret?
Excuse me?
November?
It'd be released in November. The grant opportunity would be announced in November for release in January.
Right.
So it looks for projects that would provide service enhancements, projects that, where the project timeline for completion is pretty quick, where there's an opportunity for other local governments to join. So this project is really an
good
ideal
match.
type of project for this grant. The grant, in this particular case, could provide a significant amount of implementation funding. It could provide some capital funding. I don't know if I'd go so far as saying it could provide an ambulance, but it could certainly provide equipment needed to equip the ambulance. So that's something that we would definitely look at, and that would significantly offset year one costs.
In times past, as I've talked through the rollout, the transition period from the time agreements are made, things are signed, people have begun shifting. My question is, this doesn't get switched on in a day. What's the duration of
The
transition?
period.
Because there'll be some overlap at that point where there'll be some call from different towns while things are rolling forward. I'm assuming you don't start on Monday, having ceased one on Friday. Doesn't work that way.
I think we would have to all agree to move forward, pick a date for special town meetings in each town and say 3 months after it or something like that.
Yep.
So if you pick September and then go December or January 1st. Think so?
How long before you have a written agreement where everybody can look at it and
It's in draft form right
Get a
now.
draft.
Sunderland is the first town to bring the report to the Board of Selectmen. Deerfield and Whately will follow. So as soon as the 3 boards of selectmen have had a chance to look at it and discuss it, we'd be looking to bring it to legal review.
and who's going to be in charge of this? You're gonna establish
Board
another
of Over-
separate committee?
Board of Oversight. Board of Oversight.
2 members from each town,
Yep, 2 members from each town,
Plus the-
equal weight voting.
ambulance director for the service.
That's the proposal.
So who would be the Board of Oversight?
It would be 2 Board of Selectmen designees from each town. You know, I don't know who,
Sure.
I don't know who the
Designees.
board would, yeah, the board
Designees.
would designate 2 representatives to serve on the Board of Oversight.
Okay, so each
In our
board,
particular case, you might be looking at them.
so each
One
board
of
would two members.
We didn't want to limit it to saying that it was the town administrator and ambulance director or anything. We wanted it to
The
be.
board can
open
designate,
to
yeah,
that.
the board could designate whoever they feel is the best qualified to serve on the Board of Oversight. And the Board of Oversight's responsibility would range from recommending the hiring of personnel to reviewing with the ambulance director the annual budget proposal and recommending that, to reviewing standard operating procedures for the service with the ambulance director. So there would be a wide range of responsibilities.
Normally, when you set up a board like that, you usually have an odd number of members.
I know.
Right.
I know, yeah.
Is
We
there-
recognize
Well, we
that.
could always leave we didn't want to put the ambulance director as a voting
It took
member because he's got too much
40 or 50 years to
influence,
square away Frontier somewhat.
Right.
but-
I don't think we should wait 40 or 50 years. We should try and get equity right up front.
Sure.
Mhm.
Sure. Yeah, you raise a good point, actually, with respect to even numbers.
1 member at large.
There you go.
Come on, someone get from 6 to 7 or from 6 to 9.
1 member is from one town 1 year, the next town the next.
We debated this and debated this and debated this, because, I mean, a 9-person committee is unwieldy.
Right.
We also wanted this to be an operation that could work quickly. You've got people who I think have a real commitment to the service. So we didn't have a problem with an even number of folks, and we didn't have a
And
problem.
wanted every town to have an equal weighted vote.
An
Equal weight, yeah.
equally weighted vote. We're looking at this as being a consensus kind of operation. And really trying to think what issues might be hot button issues and divisive ones. I think the agreement is fairly well crafted. I'll be happy to distribute copies to the finance committees. The finance committee would like to see it, but keep in mind that 1, the select board hasn't had a chance to go opine on this yet, for 1, and for 2, it hasn't been submitted to council. So,
But it would be nice to be able to have some input on it before it goes to the council.
well, that's why
That's why
the select
we-
board needs to review it.
But I think that should also go to the finance committees.
Well, the finance committee is not a governing board, but you certainly can offer an opinion.
That's the point.
That's the idea of it.
Yeah.
Better off with a few extra brains in there, even if they're half-wits, don't make any difference. Let's get a few more, because those questions will come up sooner or later. Every question will come up.
What's that?
Tell
What
it like you
question's that?
feel, John.
That's right.
Invariably, there'd be finance questions.
You know, it was interesting, and the reason that there was the town administrators and the ambulance directors were asked to put this together, we felt that they were probably the best people to do that because they would let politics to the side. They don't, I mean, town administrators shouldn't care about politics, and ambulance directors don't worry about politics because that's not what they do. And I would caution trying to change something based purely on politics. And I wish Jonathan and Mark were here, because when we talked about the Board of Oversight, Len was part of those conversations. When the three of us sat down, talked about stuff, it was very simple. I mean, we didn't care about politics, and I think that's how you get things done. If we were only concerned about and at the time when things were changing, there was a lot of stuff going on, and we didn't care. We just wanted what was best for our residents. So I have to ask John, you know, really what's best for the residents, and remember your fiscal responsibility to your towns also. But I would think most time on an ambulance director, if you want someone to vote a certain way, don't put your ambulance director on this or don't appoint him, because I know how they're gonna vote. Right now, I can tell you that Bobby and they're gonna vote the same. They're gonna try to offer the best service and what's best for the service, not whatever I think. Well, I may be concerned about money, but they're gonna be concerned about the service, I think. So, that's just my thoughts on that.
David, you've been quiet the whole night?
No, we've gone over it.
Reversed on it, right?
I've piped in a few times,
I
you know, so.
Not really the whole night.
Yeah, no, but I think it's something we need to keep rolling with,
We've had
definitely.
three meetings, one in each of the three towns, one full presentation here, one multi-board
Yep.
meeting here as well, so, I mean,
We've
there's
gone
probably
over it.
the question, the time for vetting is past.
Yep.
Yeah, good point. Path forward and timeline. Special town meeting in when, 35 days?
Special town meeting, well, Sunderland, as the board knows, Sunderland needs its state aid numbers.
Right.
We do believe we'll have the available, the excess levy capacity to pay for the system with the three towns. We'd have to look again with a system for, that included two towns. State aid numbers, what do you think? What do you think, July, end of July, mid-July?
Tell you one thing now.
The budget's not gonna be released till the end of this week,
Okay.
so it'll be a while.
Okay, all right. You know, and then we'd be looking at having to do the special town meeting to appropriate the funds prior to our recap being done on October 1st, so by September at the latest.
Fits in the timelines with the mutual boards?
The select board in Deerfield has talked about a September town meeting to iron out any budget problems, to consider this. They also, we've got a couple, I won't be there, but they do have a couple of other bylaw issues and the like they need to take up. So there'll be a September special town meeting.
Frontier?
Right.
Frontier capital plan?
It's gonna come again.
Say, we voted one way, Deerfield voted another way, Whately voted another way, and I'm sure Conway's voting another way tonight,
Right.
so.
Right, so we're all gonna have to revisit that.
My guess would
They're
be,
gonna-
I mean,
They're gonna have to, Frontier will have to sort that out, and I think, my hope would be that folks take Frontier up on their offer to meet in September, and that charter, that 1954 document that's been added and subtracted from, gets rewritten as a charter, and the whole issue around capital items and the like gets worked out. I'd also hope that people would bring in somebody like Mark Abrams to take a good hard look at that funding formula, because it shouldn't spike from year to year to year. There should be some way of smoothing it so that
We wish we had help with that 3 years ago, Bernie, but you guys, where were you guys?
I was telling you that.
I'm just telling what happened to us. I don't wanna hear whatever happened to Deerfield this year. I don't care, because when we needed help, where were you guys? We weren't calling for we weren't calling for a revision of the formula back then, were we? So let's not hear it now.
2007.
Let's not hear it now. That's baloney. That has no place in the discussion. If we go back to that time, in point, and when ed reform came about, the town of Sunderland and the town of Whately had absolutely no reason to vote for that ed reform formula. We did it because we thought it was a fair thing to do. That's why you guys asked for us to do it. We did it, and now we gotta revisit because we get hit hard this year. Baloney.
Whately with respect to fire, same timeline?
Same time frame.
So, January 1st?
That's
Just
what we've
tired.
been aiming for, is a start to the year.
That stuff is stupid.
Questions with respect to the fire service?
Or ambulance?
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Fire
Talk
services.
fire service.
Fire service is next.
What it's like.
Fire service is
Fire
next.
service is coming up.
Again, we're talking about distribution of assets across the geographic area. I don't know how else to boil it down. You know, in larger parts of the country, it's based on geography and population distribution. Massachusetts, we have how many 500 fire systems in the 350 towns?
Can I just ask,
Between districts and towns, et cetera.
Oh,
et
no,
cetera.
we got two districts in we got two
That's why-
districts
that's
in
why-
Deerfield, for God's sake.
That's why I
So
swagged
we
the
don't
500.
wanna service the non-paying tax members of the town of Deerfield.
We should get used to this process, because we're gonna be coming back more often for more topics for the same thing, I think, you know. It's
can I
gonna
just
happen.
ask, Bernie and Lynn, when do you expect to bring the plan to your boards?
My board doesn't meet again until May 29th, so.
Okay. Do you think, I'd love to get a sense from you, where your boards are at after your first meeting, so we can start, working a little more on the IMA.
We can have this conversation probably on the 22nd.
Okay, so both before the end of the month?
Failing that, the next regular posted meeting, I think, would be June 8th.
I
So
think
sometime in
maybe
that
we'd have I would say our first meeting in June would be a better opportunity for them to actually
Okay, so beginning of June.
decide, because I'll bring this all to them on the May 29th meeting, and
So would it be helpful for one of us to go?
I think it would be absolutely helpful. I think if nothing
you're
else,
welcome.
let's make sure that everybody, each one of the boards hears the same thing.
Correct.
And if there's any differences, let's talk about it at that point in
And
time.
I'll show the town administrators
point.
the same courtesy they've shown by coming tonight. I'll go to your meetings.
We'll steal your car.
Okay, I'll share it.
Probably-
Make
Go
some
for it.
edits.
There you go, you can make it.
Might be in your inbox already.
It is.
That's right, yeah.
Just make a few edits. Actually, you know, I really do want to thank Margaret and Lynn, you know, working along with them on this. We've worked together on other projects, we've been part of hiring committees and the like. But I really think that I've got two excellent colleagues in this town in the Wake, and I really very much appreciate all the work that they put in on it, and the good spirit that everybody's approached this. I mean, we've quibbled over details, but there's been no arguments. I think Tom was fair in his summation, that there were no politics, there was no ownership. We just wanted to get this done, and I really appreciate the good, hard work that they've done.
Thank you.
And I've heard very much the same with respect to Margaret's perspective as well. That is, when you dug in, you know, that working with the other towns has just been a real treat. A treat in the trenches.
If that can be a treat.
Well, it's still trench work, no matter how you cut it, you know? MOUs, budgets, et cetera.
What's an important thing is we've all initiated it. It hasn't come from the state level
Good point. David, that's a really good point.
in like a lot of things.
And the support of the ambulance directors has
Right.
been crucial, because if it wasn't for them, the towns, I know at Sunderland's town meeting, the moderator made note that this proposal came from the ambulance director, and that does mean
Mhm.
something. That does mean something, so.
Tom?
I need a path forward. I wanna know, when are we gonna write a letter to the South Deerfield Fire District Board of Prudential Board, and when do we expect a response from them, number one? Number two, we need to take option one and option two, make it to option only. Okay? And we need, the other thing, in that first meeting in June, we need a commitment from all towns that were moving together as three, or were all moving together as two, or all moving together as one. We can't keep putting it off. And now we got another month that by the time, we're gonna wait, it's May 13th, we're not gonna do anything until the first or second week of June. We got another 4 weeks that's gonna go by. I think you have to put a proposal out there, let the people understand, let the finance committees look at it, okay? But I need to know, you gotta say, I'm in or I'm out. I don't wanna say, well, I wanna test the water a little bit more. They have to make a decision. And once they take a vote, and why are we wasting our time when it's not, we can go look for other things.
Is it feasible to have a response from the South Deerfield Fire District in 3 weeks? If we were to get a letter to them, giving them this services, space requirements, and other things, is it feasible to have a request?
I think they meet on the second Thursday of each month only, unless they call a
That's
special
probably this
meeting.
week, right?
Which means in like 2 days.
Really?
Yeah.
No, they met last week.
Oh, say Matt, last week?
I'm sure the board can, the Prudential Committee would be willing to come together on something other than a once-a-month basis.
Well, I'm sure they're willing to.
Can we have a space assessment, can we have a space needs letter written by Friday?
You know,
I
we
need
know
the
what we need,
ambulance
right?
directors to help with that, because I honestly don't know what the space requirements and the physical requirements are gonna be.
Equipment, space, locker space,
So, is that
et cetera, et
something
cetera, et
that-
cetera.
I'm out of town through Thursday. I get back into town on Friday. I've got an email, I had communications with Bill today, and I've got an email from him. The committee knows what we're looking for.
Well,
I understand where you're at.
until I see something on paper, I don't trust anybody. You gotta understand.
I understand.
But people tell me, people tell me stuff all the time, and I believe what I know. And I know right now that we have 2 towns definitely in. We have another town that are in, and then are out, then they're in, then they're out, and I have no idea. And that's something that they have to decide. I can't decide for them. I told Margaret, between Margaret and I told her, take Whiteley out, and just let us look at what Skip was talking about. Let's see what it is. Because as far as I'm concerned, Whiteley's doesn't exist in this right now. They haven't made that commitment. Well, you haven't made the commitment.
Lynn,
This is ridiculous, Tom. I don't know who you're talking to, but from all indications from my board is they wanna go in with this. And I don't know where you're
Then move
coming
it
from,
forward.
so.
Then move it forward. It's not going forward. So we need to make that determination. We need to have what towns are in, what towns are out is out, and we have to decide what our space needs. Are we gonna go Sunderland, or we go to Deerfield?
But the person who's here from Whately worked as hard as anybody on that, maybe harder.
I'm not, it's
And
not,
you know what,
it's
your-
not about her,
your-
Bernie.
Your words were
Bernie.
hurtful to her.
And it shouldn't
You
be.
acknowledge that.
She's not a policymaker in the town, she's a town administrator.
Well, then get on the phone.
She's a
with the
town
board.
administrator.
None of them are listening right now. Your constituents are, but none of them are listening right now. I think we need to back off on the posturing, and you're right, we need a way forward.
When would you expect this come full to fruition, Bernie, if we don't move forward and we don't put specific time dates when we're looking for?
We're actually looking at
We
October
should have been voting this past year at this town meeting schedule. If we had gone appropriately, we should have had everything to us in April. That was the goal. Mr. Chair, was that not true?
That was the goal.
That was the goal. We missed that. Now we're looking at January. So we're gonna continue another 6, 7, 8 months without providing the service to our residents? You think that's okay?
No,
I don't.
So the path.
Look at those numbers.
Nobody's happy with it.
Then do something.
If you've been doing something.
Then
Why
do
don't we
something.
forward?
You're in a position to do something. Move it forward.
If you'd like to move it forward, then being more conciliatory and more, looking more towards problem solving rather than hyperventilating and criticizing is a better way to go. My humble opinion.
Hmm.
Okay?
2 board meetings coming up. 1st of June, we should know the board's positions, in any other towns. And then we have to move forward with the budget. And really, September, August is the earliest that this can move to the MOU pace. right? That MOU phase.
The MOU has to be done now. Why are we gonna wait till September to have an MOU available?
No, actually, I was looking
have
for an
that.
indication after the board's meetings in June.
Mhm.
As soon as they meet with their boards, I was looking to have
Drafts can go
the
out.
drafts ready to go to legal counsel for
Drafts can
review.
go out to the boards tomorrow, that's easy, if they haven't got them already. And then we can have, after the boards meet, legal review can happen concurrently.
Right, and then it would go out to what, finance committees and everybody
Again,
else?
the bodies that make the votes are the boards of selectmen.
Right.
So you could, in theory, have all of this wrapped up with respect to the administrative part by middle of June, if we're gonna accelerate it,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, with full
Right.
legal review
Right.
probably by the end of June, yes.
Then it's just a
By the end
matter
of
of
the fiscal year,
votes.
you'd have full legal review.
And then it's financing, and that's relatively
That's
straightforward.
financing and then system structure.
And we can't finance
Or
until we
financing.
actually have real state
Financing.
numbers.
Right,
right?
which is July, right?
We've done the expense side of the fence, but we haven't got firm revenue numbers. So even if you had it for July 1st, which is the end of the beginning of the new current year, the new fiscal year, you'd have July 1st, and then from there, town meetings to implement. Specials
Sounds like you-
happen 35 days in Sunderland,
Right,
same animal, 35 days.
35 days is the
Everywhere.
minimum amount of time
Got it.
that statutory required to call a meeting and so
Right.
that.
So if everything happened starting with tonight's timeline, it would be 35 days after we know the state revenue picture.
sounds like you could open up the new year with the new service, like,
You could,
at that point, you're rolling, full, you know, that gives you your transition period after the town meetings.
3 months of transition, ambulance directors,
So we had planned on.
so 3 months of
3 months
transition.
will work.
So if everything gelled and went together well, it could
Everybody
be,
agrees to agree, and
Mhm.
we
It could
should
be
know.
a first in the fall, not a first in the winter. Right? Back up from the timeline now. Letters go out, meetings happen,
Right.
MOUs are done, they're codified, town meeting happens, approval, implement. October 1st?
Doesn't sound like there's a lot
Hmm.
of impediments to
Right
the
after the
space
final,
issue.
right after the last town's,
Correct.
town meeting vote or whatever it's gonna take for the financing.
Correct. Okay, so,
Implement in the sense of starting the transition so that we're ready to go.
On January 1st.
1, right? Yes.
And so that's like our up and running date.
again, there's an overlap, there's a transition. You haven't abandoned all of the services to make this happen. It's not the new egg, it just doesn't hatch, literally, no pun intended. But you still have the overlap, you still implement, you still figure a couple of months to implement maximum. Then we got new faces, we got the hiring process complete, we got all our stuff in order, we're in a home, and the first call comes in.
I'd like to direct Margaret to have 2 budgets, one with 2 towns and one with 3 towns, so
Sure.
that we can discuss, we know what the numbers are.
Yep.
And I will be consistent, Bernie.
Yeah.
We need 2 sets of numbers,
Sure.
because there's a good possibility one town may not be involved.
We can give you the.
And at the same time, we have to take option 1, which is the South Deerfield Fire Station, and the other is public safety. We have to eliminate one of those options, so we all know what we're talking about. Those are facts, that's how you do business.
Sure, that was the goal,
And you know that, Bernie. And you can make this thing last a long, long time, which we have already. Instead of discussing this with our people, our town meeting, and so that we can put numbers in forward, we're going back and forth, let's just move it forward.
I think we just talked about the timeline, Tom, that we can move forward.
Scott, I understand that, but do you see how many calls are not being made on the first or second thing? Does that not concern everybody in this room?
Sure it does.
Then why are we discussing this? It's like, move it forward.
I'm pretty sure we are
Well,
doing that.
Proof is in the pudding.
You're
As I
absolutely
said,
right.
we should have been here in April. And it's May
We're-
13th,
we're
and
a
we're
month
absolutely, we're no closer today.
Yeah.
We still,
I believe, based on the group's, meetings, I think that, we as a group, would still want to work with the Whately Town Administrator, because I do believe that there's a sense there, I don't know from how many board members, I do believe there's a sense there that they would be willing to move forward with this, and I don't mean
We still
commit
need to
all
have-
of our time on it.
Right.
It's gotta go to their board as a whole, but I think I've seen, we've seen incredible commitment from the town administrator. So I just want, if that's a reflection of the majority of our board, then
We just have to have a plan B, that's all.
If I can make a suggestion, Tom, I would reach out for the Whately board, let
I
them
have.
know that we're looking for
I
a
talk to them,
decision.
I talk to one member all the time.
Okay. Tell them we're looking for a decision early June, are you in or you're out of the pool, you gotta let us know, because we're
Right.
moving forward.
The old, it's time to fish or cut bait.
Yeah.
And
So,
And the only thing I can say, would you look at, their EMS director has asked for an opportunity to try to make their program work. They put $32,000. Guess what? That $32,000 doesn't go into effect until July 1st. So their staffing that they're planning on doing doesn't even start to get a try until July 1st. Okay? I'm saying we can't, as a group, we can't wait till July 1st.
but there's no denying that there's that one component of this system that they're never gonna get with the on-call service.
Sure.
And that's the response time.
Right,
That's
yeah.
never, ever gonna happen with the on-call service.
And-
I don't know,
and
that's just
again,
one.
See, you guys misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm saying, for me, it's a purely a business decision. You don't have a town that's fully committed at the present time, so you can't waste your resources trying to discuss why they're gonna be involved or what, I don't really care what they're gonna, and you gotta understand, I don't care what they do. I love them to have it with, I think we're a stronger thing by having them with us.
Correct.
But I can't worry, we can't waste time and effort on look at what Hatfield. Hatfield was there for an initial, and at some point they said, look, we wanna maintain what we have right now. That's good, that was good for Hatfield. At some point, they may decide to change and join us, and that's fine also. And at some point, maybe Whately doesn't get in this year with us. Maybe Sunderland and Deerfield do it together. And that's fine also. Maybe Whately joins in 6 months or a year. That's fine also. But we gotta understand what our commitment's gonna be. That's all I'm saying.
We talked about that later, buy-in if some neighboring town wanted to
Absolutely.
Just to join.
buy in, so it's on the radar.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we'll get the letter out before Friday for space requirements, pretty straightforward. You need X amount of bays, X amount of locker space, X amount of utilities,
That's
right? You can model it after the
Tangible
existing.
list.
You could email me whatever you have, so I could put the letter together, or,
yeah, I'll take a look, I'll see what I've got, I mean, I've gotta go in there and actually measure what we've got for space.
We can,
You got David in there, tell David to do it. Tell me.
And I'd like double bay,
I think we're sort of feeling the pressure of other budgetary issues that are weighing on this.
and there isn't gonna be much additional, because we're not looking for additional
You need,
space.
Just
We've got the space
Right.
we need,
Well, the only additional would be the priority spacing.
second ambulance.
Second ambulance, right. And then bunk space or something like that?
No,
That's
no,
not
No,
that.
we're not,
all
no,
by
we're not,
shifts.
we're not let's not even go there, because I got so tired about hearing about
Right, right.
how Deerfield
we need
EMS
bumps.
is gonna take over the conference room to make bunk space. We're not doing it.
Shift,
There's a lot of reasons why you don't wanna do that, never mind.
Well, then it makes it that much easier.
Just from an employment standpoint.
you need
Yeah.
some office administration space, some health and sanitation space, some garage space,
Yep, that's it.
probably some shared training space.
Mm.
If I was a guessing man, it wouldn't much
Yeah.
look different than an electric shop with a couple of big trucks in it, John.
Yeah.
It ain't
and
gonna look,
Space
it-
for electric trucks.
it's
Exactly
not-
right.
It's not gonna look much different from the way it is now,
Correct.
except for the second ambulance.
Correct.
That's the big.
And even the training space, if,
we
this
should-
building here would still be available for training, so
Right.
we should
trainings
have-
could be available,
They're regional trainings.
regional trainings, that's right,
It's
yeah,
out there
any,
till 5. You know, so FEMA uses it all the time, MEMA uses it, other fire service agencies use it, it's a big training room, it's there.
So we get that out, get the, in front of the district, and then move forward with the next board meetings for each of the member towns, and then get MOUs out for legal review parallel. to board reviews. Might as well. Move the clock forward.
And now that this has been discussed at the Sunderland Select Board's meeting, every meeting, I'll try to bring, I'll try to bring an update so the board can continue to discuss different components of the proposal.
Okay.
Okay, anything else? If not, thanks. We're gonna move through the agenda. Thanks, Chief.
Send you the PowerPoint, Bernie.
See
What
you.
you want? Oh, you got it already, yeah.
Nice to see you again, Jack.
So we get 8:15, another appointment. If you leave that door open, there's a set of switches right there, Jack. If you turn the other switch on, perfect. Thank you.
I am all set with this.
Okay,
You want me to stay for anything else on your agenda there?
There's
or-
let's
one
see,
day-
Chief.
Other than the entertainment value
Yeah, we'll
of
do
it,
that
or-
next. We'll do that next. What's SVFA anyway?
Volunteer for-
That's,
Hey, how you
so we
doing?
got a one-day request for a polka dance. SVFA.
June 9th,
Okay.
2 to 6.
Alternate, bill permit, email. Why don't I see it?
Tell me it's here.
I saw it, no?
Chief, what are
The
you looking for?
the license is not there
Yeah,
yet.
yeah,
Oh,
Right.
okay.
we got the,
I thought it-
So it's just a request.
our box checking paperwork.
I don't have the, well, in the,
I don't have the license because I still have it.
policies.
Okay,
Hold on.
great. So we got a one day.
Do we get comments in from each of the chiefs? Because, they're kind
I
of a wild group, so.
Exactly right.
Need to go home.
You're staying.
Almost, Margaret.
Red Sox, 'cause there's,
One day, liquor license policy. Here it is.
So
Okay.
we don't have a request in writing.
I didn't
That's
fill it
okay.
out yet.
That's all right.
When is it? When is the
June
event?
9th,
So,
Sunday, 2 to 4.
would the board like to take this
2 to
up with the
6.
written request next Monday?
No, he's got shifty eyes.
Well, I think it's probably better to have any request in writing when it comes to the ABCC, not local, but when it
understand.
comes to the ABCC.
Agreed. Let's have it on our next week's agenda.
Is that okay with you?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect.
Are you signing a radio license? All my 2 cents worth?
We do want to have your 2 cents worth with respect to the radio license, although it's not on tonight's agenda.
I thought it was because I just got an email about it today.
The radio license?
We got one too.
Did we? Okay, what did it say?
From the FERCog, right?
Yeah.
Communications.
Oh,
That came today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Cindy sent it.
So with respect to,
I haven't had a
with
chance to
respect to
look
the
I would
radio,
sign it because we're well involved with it and we can't very well run without it. And we just put that new
Yep.
repeater type thing in behind.
Is that
Well,
agreement?
It's actually in our station, but for the Route 116
Mhm.
zone there.
Is that
is
effective July
working.
1st? Is that the
I
new
believe it
agreement?
is, yeah.
Okay, then we're good for next week too on that.
okay, we'll have them
Yes, I'll
both
be
on,
back next week.
both on for next week.
Come back next week, Bob.
Hey, thanks.
You'll be a full agenda item.
Maybe 2, maybe 1.5.
Okay.
Nice.
so a
Have a
whole
good one.
water recital.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Robert.
So we've got an appointment. with
Robert,
the-
can you make sure they move forward, please?
All right, so next week. All right.
Sarah Snyder and her
Gary
backup.
Breer. Oh.
We're going to talk about circuit, athletic, recreational, mountain biking, cyclocross, Red
Oh,
Bull.
cyclocross is good.
No?
Cyclocross built for 2.
Cyclocross, I like it.
I'm here with Gary Briere. There's a project that's been developing in town that we wanted to come and talk to you about and give a status report. We had been planning to ask to establish a formal committee at this time, but we feel like we need a little more time to figure out how we're gonna organize, because right now we have 10 people on the committee and, a lot from Concom, a lot from CPC, and we're trying to figure out what's the best way to configure the committee, and we might even get some more people on, so.
So before the committee,
Yes.
what's the what?
The mission
What
statement.
are we trying to do?
Right, so, so what we're trying, actually, Gary,
Yep.
has graciously offered to chair this, project, so I'm gonna let him, introduce it.
Did you know you volunteered for that?
What's that?
Did you know you volunteered for that, Gil?
I just heard. No, that is not true.
I think Sarah's running for something too, she's very
Went
good.
to the first meeting just a week or so ago, and it was really a wonderful group of people and a really wonderful concept for using some of those CPA funds to improve the town. But I can say that what we really found particularly exciting for us was something that was less about recreation, so to speak, and more about how do we create an environment within Sunderland where people can walk or bike or do other things to be able to get to the places they need to go as opposed to using their car. So whether it's improvements to sidewalks and connecting, whether it's this building and the library and the school and the various markets and restaurants and places in town, and really create as much as we possibly can a very pedestrian and bicycling and active transportation kind of environment in town. And so that's one of the basis, kind of the fundamental piece that I think people are really energized around. And I think from there it can go out into a number of other nodes where people can get farther afield. But we feel that by focusing in that way, not so much on the recreational, but how do we create an active lifestyle for folks in town, that it not only has health benefits for our residents and our community, it's also got livability benefits, it's got business benefits, and it's got real transportation benefits as well. So the bottom line is, I think a lot of different dimensions of the community improve through that. And so there's a wonderful energy among the committee members, and it's well represented among folks from Concom and school and historical commission, so many different assets that we feel we can really blend together. So we're excited about it, and as Sarah indicated, we're a little bit reluctant to frame entirely the structure because we really don't want to alienate any of those interests, and at the same time we recognize that a lot of the folks who are involved are people who are involved in other committees in town, and we don't want such complexity that we're posting things because we've got a quorum of this group and a quorum of that group, and
Right.
So it's very exciting, great group of people that Sarah has shepherded together, and I think there's a lot of enthusiasm for it, and we're looking forward to coming back to you with some thoughts and ideas as the committee begins to formulate its thinking. So our next meeting is coming up in a week,
May
2 weeks.
29th, I think,
May 29th. So we're really looking forward to the task.
David?
When you're ready to, let me know. I'll be glad to work with you on setting up a page for you on there and getting up, info. If you've got like a mission statement for, feedback, for the group and everything, you know what I mean? So that,
Page on the town website.
yes, because
Oh,
I'll put up a
great.
page on there for you. And because I'm trying to get more stuff, especially about the bike, the bike race and things like that. And I'm trying to, and this is very good coming into the master plan, because to me, I see that as sort of like the master plan. It's just a nice guiding beacon for all of these things to interconnect. And
Yeah, exactly.
and I think it's especially good that we're seeing all of this traction and stuff happening before our tercentennial. So I'm hoping that by the time that rolls around, we'll have a lot of really good progress and things to show everybody. And I think this is just one of those pieces, and I think it's fantastic. And you're right,
The
because
initial impulse for
agree.
this, we were,
Right.
CPC was looking at, okay, we've got this tricentennial coming up, and we'll have,
Yep.
some funds that if we really pool them together, we can do something that significant that will really, make a lasting difference in the town.
And you're right too, because it really connects to every aspect of life, the commercial, the
Exactly.
livability, and, you know, we need to start assessing, you know, other means of transport and ways to get around and everything. And it just really helps to make the, you know, the town a better place to live.
Yeah.
Right.
And I love the synergy between the history, which as we were
Yes.
beginning to talk a bit about the assets that we would really want to link here. So you've got this wonderful history along with thinking about the future and livability of our community in the future and,
We've had trolley lines here before in town,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah. And also wanting to, take more advantage of our situation on the river.
Well,
Yeah.
well, that's it,
Design.
because
We've got a
it's-
design for access.
right.
Now we
and-
need to
Oh,
get
is
access.
that right? Great.
Yeah, we have a
Well,
design done, yeah,
And not just in.
but tie everything in.
But,
Right.
you know, some kind of pedestrian pathway or.
The
you know,
board has
the-
talked about that.
Well, and it's a
Yeah.
matter too of, you know, we're dealing with the town, but it's also, one of the things I've been thinking about a lot lately is development in the valley. And this spiders out into the valley too,
Absolutely.
you know, is another, we can't just keep thinking of town by town, but we have to look at the whole valley as a community, really.
Yeah, and we've been thinking about that as
Yeah.
well and have at least some preliminary planning tools for thinking about how we connect to some of the other assets that
Right.
Sugarloaf, not the least of which is just, you know, a mile away from here, but outside
Right.
of the town and a very popular destination for a lot of folks in town.
Right.
So,
And then we're a way stop on the bike path, the scenic bike path through,
yeah.
you know, you saw, anybody who's out here in the nice weather in the summer, you, I don't know how many spandex outfits goes whizzing by, you know, so.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
right,
It is
that's
the
right.
Franklin County Bikeway.
It's like,
Yeah.
am I in the French Alps or am I in Sunderland? you know?
Tom, any thoughts, questions, concerns?
My would not to be form a committee because I think you'd be too restrictive.
Right.
I think at the present time, you're better just bringing people in and out, let people that have ideas or are interested, let them come and talk and listen to what's going on and what the ideas, and not to limit it at the present time. Because as soon as you put a committee
Right.
together, then a lot of things come into place and you may lose some of that give and take that you're so high. I mean, if you think about how it started about a conversation about how to use CPA money.
Yeah.
And it just kept growing from there. So right now, I would think it's an infantile stage, and I think a lot of well, if anybody listens to some of the ideas, I think they should come, if anybody out there has interest, not just come to the meeting and listen to what's being, because you get very excited about what they're proposing.
Yeah.
It is, it's amazing. If you think about it, it's bringing young, old, middle-aged, bikes, walkers, wheelchairs, all of that together. Fishermen, kayakers, canoe people. It's bringing all of those people together and exploring some of the things that a lot of people haven't known. So
Right.
I think the more people involved, the better. But as soon as you form a committee, and right now, they're not charged, you're not handling funds, you're developing,
Ideas.
you're really developing a charge for the committee.
Right,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
It's
So
a
you're
good point,
really,
actually.
you're really just great citizens trying to do a great thing for the town. So I wouldn't,
Yeah, it's a good point,
I
actually.
wouldn't formalize it
Sometimes
yet.
that brainstorming stops.
Yes.
Creativity kind of turns
That's
into
true.
form.
Exactly,
Right.
That's true.
exactly.
Interesting.
So we're enjoying the forming stage
Yeah.
now in a very creative moment for it. We want to preserve that as really as long as we can, so.
So we'll see you in like middle of June? Or maybe a couple of meetings forward?
I
Couple of
think
meetings
so,
forward?
yeah.
I wouldn't worry about some since fall time.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe you can decide to put a skateboard park in, I don't know. I mean, that,
A dirigible airport. Like it.
I think the connection to the
Well,
rivers.
You know, one point that Richard made is the town has so many assets already, and so many wonderful points, and it's sort of a question of just tying them together,
Yeah.
just and
Well,
finding a way
that's it.
and directing people to them and like
Right.
making a pathway. And we started calling the project the Community Pathways Project. because it's-
Nice way to word it.
Good, I wonder if you can tap into any of the COGS resources. They've done a lot of work on the scenic, on the scenic byway
Yeah.
stuff, and I just wonder if you might be able to tie it in
There
with
certainly
that.
is a lot of knowledge there and a
Yeah.
lot of talent,
Yeah.
and so I think we'll want to explore that.
Mm.
And I'm just thinking too, even some other cities, how they've dealt with things like that, like I think of like Providence has kind of retied themselves to the thing, and then you think of like cities like Portland, some stuff in the Northwest, I think those might be good
Yeah.
examples to look at, because, and I think it's great that you guys are tying in the river, because I still think it's a crime every
Yeah.
time I go down 91. Here's Springfield, there's a whole bunch of industrial wasteland, and here's the river, and I always found it fascinating how old Springfield is, and yet it's one of the only cities I can think of that's on a river that is completely separate from the river. Even Holyoke is more connected to the river than Springfield is,
Yeah.
and it's a crime, it really is.
You're absolutely right, and there's a couple of things. One, there's a lot of larger cities who have thought about
Yeah,
complete streets and you know, the notion of how do we integrate lots of different transportation. There's not as many small towns that have
Right,
had to
exactly.
think about that.
it's usually urban areas.
And so it'll be interesting to find towns of our population size that, and how they've done it. But there are a few towns that have more assets right along this spectacular main street
Right,
to be able to tap into. And then relative to the river, one of the advantages I think that we have is, unlike unlike Springfield and many other cities that kind of physically turn their back on the river, ours is right there, and there's actually some
Right.
good access points to it. They've just never really been developed, but they haven't been ruined.
Right.
right, exactly, that's the flip side of
Yeah,
that.
so I think we've got some real advantages there. I think the project gives us an opportunity to think about things in a way that many larger communities have thought about, but not many our size, so.
So maybe agility
Good.
works in our favor.
Yes.
Yeah,
You think about that, back to the, you know, levels of structure.
yep.
Sometimes the free form goes pretty well. Nice. Well, I appreciate the update and look forward to it in the future.
We're working right now with a COG, if I could just,
Please.
we're working right now with a COG on developing a community-wide needs assessment survey. You may have heard something about it as a member of the planning board.
That's right.
But we're reaching out to town boards and committees to get their top 2 issues, long-term issues that they're discussing, things that'll be, you know, that'll impact the town for a long time. And I'll go ahead and send you that, so for your next meeting,
be
you can just
great.
have a little conversation about it, because I think the whole transportation component needs to be brought into the survey, so
Yeah.
it could be really useful.
Good.
Okay.
Well, it's a really wonderful intersection of a lot of different thought leaders in town, and other than this office that tries to, you know, this board that tries to integrate a lot of those things, I think it's gonna be a
Good.
fun project.
I look forward to both the work as well as the
Exciting.
outcome.
Yes.
Thanks so much for the update.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Okay, minutes of May 6th.
Motion.
Motion on the minutes of May 6th. Second. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, Margaret, on May 6th. Okay.
Oh, here's a budget again. How did that get in there?
Oh,
Where did that? Another one? No.
It's the zombie budget,
The
it just
zombie
keeps coming
budget.
back.
Board summer schedule. We talked about going into a summer schedule. We have a draft summer schedule in front of us. Looks like it's June 3rd, June 17, July 1st, July 15, July 29, August 12, August 26th, and then discuss weekly meetings back on September 9th.
that takes you from Memorial Day to Labor Day.
Okay? Any questions?
Or as needed.
Or as needed, right? Always call a meeting, that's easy.
Right, exactly.
Tom, any questions? No. Motion on the summer schedule?
Motion.
Motion's
Second.
been made, seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. And as has been in the times past, we'll extend that to other office holders in Mondays. Post that accordingly. We usually see something from the assessors, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. We have letter of resignation.
Mr. Chair, alternate building inspector, dear Board of Selectmen, please accept this letter as a formal request to resign as a Town of Sunderland alternate building inspector due to personal matters. I'll no longer be able to fill this position. Sincerely, Tim Nyhart.
Tim's been the alternate here for a little while now. Motion to accept
Motion.
Second.
with regrets. Margaret, if we could send a letter.
Sure.
Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0. Okay.
How's our search going, Margaret?
I was
The
just.
search is going, well, we have 2 days left in accordance with the personnel bylaws we advertised. We have 2 days left for people to turn in resumes or applications. We will accept resumes, and applications could be completed later. Once the deadline passes, we'd be looking at having a first round of interviews. So, again, we're taking the parallel course, considering the Franklin County Cooperative Inspections Program, along with applications for in-house staff.
We talk about the composition of the interview. Is there an interview
Yeah,
team? Is there?
personnel bylaw does recommend, it recommends a variety of different positions serving on the interview panel. I was thinking in this particular case, because it does say Board of Selectmen and Personnel Committee, I was thinking of suggesting that David Pierce sit on the interview team, because he's both a member of the Board of Selectmen and Chair of the Personnel Committee. And also, I'd like to see the assessors represented on the search team, the interview team, because Building Commissioner does a lot of work with the Board of Assessors. So I would like to ask Lee Whitcomb, the assessor's administrative assistant, to sit on the interview panel. I'd also be willing to sit, so we'd have an odd number.
Composition to discussion?
I would wonder, why would you consult the Board of Appeals?
I was thinking that as well, and that would also work. The chair of the Zoning Board of Appeals, that would be great too, because the person is going to be the zoning enforcement officer.
Right.
Spends a lot of his time. I mean,
Yeah.
I would say probably 1 out of every 4 or 5 zoning board things has to deal with a decision from the.
That's right.
Yep.
In fact, he was just looking up, he was just reading, our alternate right now is just in there reading everything about accessory apartments tonight, so. So yes, a lot of it has to do with zoning, a lot of it, so that's fine.
I would ask the chair of the zoning board if he'd be interested in doing that, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. But actually, Margaret, I spoke to that earlier today and wanted to put that out in front of all of the board members. As far as composition goes.
Since according to the international code,
Oh, yeah, we do have everything too.
zoning board is appointed by.
Mm-hmm.
So is the board okay with a 3? If I were to coordinate the 3, I don't know that I'd be needed to sit on the interview team, given the number, but to have the board's rep, personnel committee rep, and assessors rep, and the ZBA chair or a member of the ZBA.
Do you think of any other
Sound.
people who would interact with the?
Planning board?
Not as
Not so
much
much
as
zoning.
ZBA.
Right.
Yeah, not as much as zoning. I mean, fire would, any of the other inspectors would, but
Right.
Well, a board of 3, and if you wouldn't mind coordinating?
I don't mind coordinating.
What do you think, fellas? Tom?
I don't know why Margaret could.
I
tell you the
could
truth,
sit too.
I don't know, in all deference to the great wisdom of the individual from the town of Deerfield, I don't have a problem when people are trying to solve the same goal, having an even number.
Right. Sure. So how about?
Yeah, I really don't think we'll have any major ties, but.
I think Margaret's gonna deal with that individual daily, she should be involved.
Yeah. So Margaret, David, do you mind?
No, that's fine.
Lee, we'll reach out to Lee, see if she wants to be on that, as well as Steve Kroll.
Yeah, it's a good point about the zoning, though.
Again, so much of that effort is enforcement officer.
Right, exactly.
Okay, yeah, it
One
is.
feeds the other
It's a
sometimes,
very-
most of the time. Okay.
That can be the most tricky part of the job, so, okay.
So can I ask a question? Obviously, that's an interview process, it's pretty straightforward, and a recommendation will come forward. Is there, at the end of this posting, if there aren't enough applicants, is there reason to consider reposting? Now, we did not internally post, we went out right away.
Yeah, and I also sent out a broadcast on my organization's listserv.
Okay.
with not much success.
Okay. Again, wanted to simply put it out there for
Yeah.
discussion.
Well, it's good. It's a good thing to throw out there.
Okay, well, let's see how this, again, posting is still open right now. See what names come forward, and then, review the next steps when that closes. Should be pretty straightforward. We've hired before, we know how to hire. Okay. Excellent, thank you.
All right.
Alternate, should we post, we should actually wait for the new hire to see about an alternate in the event a name comes up.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, that could end up being an interview question, if they'd
Right.
be able to coordinate an alternate.
Right.
If they'd know of
If they
someone
had
who
the
could serve.
ideal alternate.
Absolutely.
What would that individual's, et cetera, et cetera.
By the way, do we tell you you had to
Yeah.
bring
Right.
an alternate pick?
Sometimes you just, anyway. Capital funding, I asked for this to be on the agenda tonight. We know we have asked historically for, and we'll make this a short discussion, we have asked for, on several occasions, recurring revenue stream on the tax rate for funding capital stabilization, specifically, not individual projects, but capital stabilization. I think at the annual town meeting, the town meeting members recognize that voting on a capital budget is not earth-shattering and/or groundbreaking, that we can actually have discussion about individual elements, and we have voted on budgets since probably the town was incorporated, mainly the operating budget. It's very much the same. That said, we have not had a recurring revenue stream. We have a special election coming up, and I'm asking take the temperament of the board to see if they're interested in revisiting the $75,000 override question, in that we have a special election ahead of us. We would have to call a town-wide election, and it would be a single question on a single paper ballot, according to the town clerk, who I asked the mechanical question about it. So, temperament of the board. We've asked a handful of times, and I will stop talking after this, I hope, and that is that two elements are coming together. One, the reduction of the overall tax rate because of the removal of the school debt. That will come maybe not in the most current tax cycle, but January 1st to buy out, and then the next tax cycle, a reduction in that debt exclusion. And this value of $75,000 going on would keep for a relatively stable tax rate, although still lower.
Lower,
Right.
by 11 cents.
Exactly.
Currently lower. The second is the principle behind the matter. We have, over the last decade, expended capital revenues as high as $472,000, and it's actually as high as $1 million. We don't plan on rebuilding the school again. But recurring, we've spent in the average of at or over $100,000 over the last decade. $111,204. And each time we've either borrowed, which we can have that fiscal discussion about, the cost of borrowing, or used one-time revenues for. So I think, for the sake of discussion, we know that this exists. We know that we do this each and every year. We spend some money on capital, and each and every year we go about finding ways to fund it. So we know there's a problem. We know there's a challenge. Do we want to ask again? Now it's up to you.
I think too, a number of people, it seems, have missed the question from what folks I've been talking to around the town.
There was the mechanics of the last
Right,
ballot.
so I think that alone might merit, revisiting it. I guess the question would be like the timing of it, right?
Timing-
Probably too late for the June
Actually,
No,
next
it's-
Monday would be.
Deadline would be the
20th,
21st, or the 20th would be the last meeting. The board could make that decision.
or we do it in November, the next election.
There isn't one in November.
This year, it's an odd month.
That's right, because it's a
We get
special,
election
not a.
fatigue. this
Yes,
year.
yes.
So again, the mechanics of it, we could notify the clerk, call the election at our next meeting, and be inside of the required timeline.
And it would save money,
We're
the
not-
special election money.
There'd be some costs associated, but we're having election anyway.
Right, that's why I think it's probably a good time to do it.
Tom?
It would be contrary to what we've done for a long time.
Yep.
I mean, we've been very respectful of people's votes.
Mhm.
So, I guess I would have a concern, but to tell you the truth, I don't think people understand that sometimes, but we have been very, consistent with how we've done things and respectful of a person's vote. I don't have a problem coming back every year, and matter of fact, I think it would be foolish for us not to come back if we look at how much we're spending and where the resources are going for that money.
Right.
Not to bring it to the people. And it's funny, but one of the things in the last election for selectmen was, there was some, listen to some of the things that were said about different things, about, you know, streetlights being turned off, and about a brush pile not being there, and about not having 24/7 police. But I voted to maintain those things, to tell you the truth. I know we worked as hard as we could to try to maintain through the budget process, to maintain what we thought was important also.
That was,
And I still remember they took a, $350,000 cut in the elementary school, and zero cut at Frontier.
Right.
Because Frontier's budget was set in stone at that point. So half the cut came from the town, half the cut came, all the cuts stayed within the town of Sunderland. None of the assessments
Correct.
moved. The elementary school and the thing. So I know where those cuts came. I don't necessarily agree with some of the things that were put back in the budget, but that was, and try to explain to people, that was done at town meeting. People that, attend town meeting are the people that control the budgets, and what the Board of Selectmen recommends sometimes. We can get on top of the stage and pound our fist and yell at the top of our lungs, but people don't have to listen to what we're saying, or the finance committee.
That's right.
So, that being said, I personally have been thinking we need a capital plan for the last 12 years, or longer. We should. I guess I would probably have trouble asking for another vote, just because I respect a person's vote, no matter what it is.
Correct.
You know what I mean? Doesn't mean I have to agree with the vote, but I do respect the vote.
Right. Yeah.
You know, and I think we're almost there, trying to educate, that we're trying to run the town like a successful business, which we are. If you look at our Standard & Poor's, our ratings have been going up. We have excess levy capacity that we didn't have before, and we haven't restored everything that we had 3 or 4 years ago, but we're getting closer. It seems one thing at a time, so I would say, yeah, I think it's important, but to come back, I don't know. And David's point, I thought, is interesting, because about people missing the question.
I think that's one of my biggest concerns about coming back, is just the number of blank ballots historically compared to before. I think, almost to a certain extent, I don't care which way it goes. I want to make sure that people have the ability to go back and say, oh yeah, I missed that. Let's address it, whichever way. But then on the flip side, we keep spending the same amount of money each time, and it just seems financially and fiscally prudent to at least maybe be able to save that money and make interest on it while we're going toward a goal in a given year. But the horse is dead.
Good points. Well, we got a week before we have to take any action on it. I wanted to have that discussion, and we can continue to have a discussion with our folks out in the community. If you have an opinion about capital stabilization, contact any one of us.
Let us know.
Okay. With respect to updates, anything prudent, or can we skip those for tonight? Board updates?
They can be skipped for tonight.
Okay. Okay, and we have a draft policy in front of us for
This is-
review, just in case
For your review.
Mel Gibson shows up with a camera crew
Well,
again?
it would be Robert Downey Jr., but just in case he shows up.
Right.
The next Iron Man will be
These were
filmed
taken, this draft policy was taken from other towns near us
Very
that
good.
have done a lot more filming than we have, but we have been contacted by a motion picture company, and I think the town would be, it'd be advisable to be
in
ready for
place.
them if it comes.
Sure. Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, so with that said, we have one other piece of correspondence in front of us, and it looks like we're working through we have a request.
Yes, this was actually gonna be one of my town administrator updates.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it to the board. The board received a letter from a resident, Russell Scott, requesting a refund of his building permit issued on August 1st, building permit approved on August 1st, 2011. It was to construct a 40 by 60 barn. Again, the building permit was approved on August 1st, 2011, and he notes in his letter that it's become apparent to him that he doesn't have the resources to construct the barn. And again, this letter came to the board. He had spoken with the building commissioner and the treasurer collector and the board's office previously, and he was advised to send this letter because the town did not have a policy or any restriction noted on the building permit application, which that is changed.
And the time of notice to the board in writing, is it within statute?
No, the building permit was only valid for 6 months.
Mhm.
To my knowledge, there was never a request to extend it.
Can we research that before we take any action?
I could call the former building commissioner, but there's no record from the former building commissioner noting the extension.
And it would have to be in writing.
Yeah, have to be in
Yeah.
writing.
So what are the options, Margaret?
Although, okay, the options, the town doesn't have a policy in place. I did contact our auditor. I spoke with a town accountant, and I spoke with several other towns regarding their policies. The biggest problem we have here is that this permit was approved in a prior fiscal year. This building permit was approved in fiscal year 12, which means that the money has long reverted to free cash. Some of the money, there is a mechanism for some of the funds to be taken from a current year expense line, the building inspector's expense line. However, that line wouldn't be able to accommodate a full refund. And there's also the issue of precedent where this town has not issued refunds for this in the past. You know, ultimately, it's a board's decision. It's not illegal to issue the refund. There's a mechanism to do it. But it's a very, very old permit.
Well, I could say it with a straight face from my other life, my work life, that if you're not acted on within a calendar year of within a year of the issuance of your permit, you have to reapply. That's in many municipalities.
Yeah, and some of the municipalities I spoke with
And I
basically give a 6-month limit. That
Right.
you have to apply for extension within the 6-month period.
Well, no,
That's
but
in some of the
international
towns.
code is that way. International
So that's
code,
the one.
international building code states that you have, a permit is good for 180 days, and at that point, you can have to request a extension for another, or single and two-family homes, you can ask for 180-day,
Right.
unlimited 180-day extensions. But, the code also says that the builder or whoever should, or the town should have a policy on how to handle if it's not used. And I would say that you probably, there was an expense exerted by the building commissioner to put the
Yes.
building in place.
Right.
So I could understand a partial refund.
Yes.
Right, like some kind of, in light of the fact that there's no policy, some
It was
kind
a
of
very, very
prorated.
highly
what is-
extenuating circumstance as
But
well.
what does the building permit say now?
The building permit was absent of any language.
But what does it say now?
What it's going to say now is that no refunds will be issued. No refunds will be issued. And basically, the expectation there is that a person who is applying for a building permit expects to construct a building. And then in 6 months' time, if it hasn't been constructed yet, the person has the right to submit a request for extension,
Absolutely.
right?
Unlimited.
That's right.
But you just
So-
have to submit a request each
So-
time in writing, I would assume, right?
Yeah, the first
To
time.
extend it? Okay.
But at the same time, we're not trying to make money off from people that are just trying to do
No.
it. I mean, that's,
No, there was clearly an expectation that this would be constructed, but
where do you wanna go, Mr. Chair?
Well, the challenge we have, of course, is the mechanism,
Mm-hmm.
right? How do we go about
We have-
dispensing
I guess
of
Margaret says
funds?
there is a mechanism.
we have, the mechanism would be through the accountant. We would have, the ability to pay out 50%, but no more than that.
And that was established because of the mechanism, or?
No, it's because of the
On the
amount
operating.
available.
Got it.
It's the amount available.
Got it. Okay, well, I guess in the sense that we're short of a policy and language on the permit, the placard application itself, if it's a prerogative of the board, we can move forward with a vote to authorize the dispensation of funds to refund the permit
50%
fee, 50%?
without precedent.
That's fine, yeah.
I mean, if you're going to take that vote, it would be without precedent, because
Right,
this
so it
is
doesn't-
absolutely not.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yep.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Is there a second?
Second for discussion.
Go ahead.
And again, the idea isn't to create a revenue source from people not doing anything. And it was unfortunate that Mr. Scott had a unfortunate
Mm-hmm.
occurrence on his property. But unfortunately, it doesn't look like we'd be able to return 100% no matter what we tried to do.
Right.
In order to refund 100%, it would be basically the same action at a town meeting that you do for unpaid bills of prior fiscal years.
Sure.
Right, we have to go through a vote.
Yeah.
As the appropriating body, right? Okay, any further discussion?
No, I'm fine.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. 2 to 1.
We've got the alternate working on the exact language on the application right now.
Very good. Okay, anything else to cover tonight? If not, we'll be back at the same bat time, at the same bat channel.
Well, Mr. Chair?
Mm-hmm.
For those of you that missed the Sunderland Town Bulky Item Day, it's occurring this weekend in Whately. So you can go to the transfer station in Whately, or Buckland, or Berniston, I think,
Charlemont?
one of those towns.
One of those.
There's 3 towns that Franklin County Solid Waste District is putting on. So if you have steel, tires, mattresses, electronics, refrigerators, metal, building construction, sheetrock, wood demolition, you can bring it over and you can get rid of it. There is a charge, and for like mattresses are $25, box springs are $25. It's not a box spring mattress, $25, it's each component is $25.
No discount for the set.
No,
No
that's right, no
discount for
set
the
discount.
set. Futon mattresses, you can bring those over. But if you think, there's no registration required. And if you want, you can go online to www.franklinsolidwastedistrict.org, I believe. Or just do a Franklin Waste District search on Google or Bing or whatever your choice is. And it'll show you the hours in the 3 towns.
Another one.
I also would like to remind people that you also have the ability, if you have bulky items that need to be disposed, you can take them to the Greenfield transfer station, which is located off from Wisdom Way. Because we member Franklin County Solid Waste District, you would pay a $5 fee, and then you would pay the normal rate that the people from Greenfield. So you'd pay a $5 fee.
Non-resident.
Non-resident, yep, thank you, Margaret. Non-resident, and then you could get rid of oils and, you know, motor oil, brake oil, refrigerators with the doors off, all of that kind of stuff, lawnmowers, riding lawnmowers, whatever, rototillers, TVs, computers.
And that's available anytime. It's important to bear in mind.
That's available anytime, so, tires, I think they limit it to 4 tires, passenger tires with rims, without rims, but it's on the thing. So it is available to the residents of town, it's just not at the, Sunderland Highway Garage.
Right.
It's up in Greenfield and/or
Wait,
it's Whately twice a year.
Mhm.
So I would tell anybody that would like to take advantage of it, that now's a good time. But there is a fee, and we used to charge a straight $15.
Right. Not anymore.
No, and people say, well, why don't you have it? He says, well, we would, but you would have to, you know, we would have to really think about increasing the cost.
Mhm.
And it would, and they have done it now for a long time, so they know how much stuff costs to get rid of it, and it's
And they're
50.
able to offset the cost, you know, directly
our
offset
fees.
the cost, right.
Absolutely.
And it's one of the benefits of the membership in the solid waste district. Although we see less and less of the membership with benefits with the curbside component, this is one of them. It's not
So-
just sludge with them.
So Bulky Waste Day, Saturday, in Whately. If you don't wanna go there, you can go up to, Greenfield. You can check out the rates, but they're pretty good. I mean, that's pretty much what you pay for. You get rid of batteries, steel, or if you have steel or batteries, you can take them to WTE Recycling, which is in, East Greenfield.
Yeah, the Montague Road, yep.
Yep.
Okay, anything else? Before we do go, over the course of the weekend, there were a couple of, house break-ins. Talking to the chief this afternoon, he expressed a big shout out to everybody to keep an eye on your neighbor's place and to watch for a message on Channel 15. And these are being investigated, and hopefully people will be brought to justice accordingly. So again, a couple of house breaks over the course of the weekend. Keep an eye on your place and your neighbors.
Lock your doors.
Lock your door.
Lock
that's
your
right.
doors. Okay, is there a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
3-0, Margaret. You can call us out at 8:57. Thank you, Tom Z.